The Spontaneity Shop presents the Guilty Feminist 10 for 10 with me, Deborah Frances-White, and my very special guest, Jessica Fostekew. Jessica Fostekew, welcome to 10 for 10, the Guilty Feminist podcast, in which I invite Guilty Feminist regulars into my home, where we don't normally record, and I ask you about the last 10 years of the Guilty Feminist and the last 10 years of feminism and the next 10 years. Thanks for having me. This is so nice. Jess, you were the first.
You know what they say, first one, best one.
And we've asked you because you've done at least 80 episodes of the Guilty Feminist.
Have I?
Yes. And I think you were, after Sophie left the co-host seat and we had the rotating co-host seat available, you were the second co-host.
Shut up.
So I think Sarah Pascoe was the first.
You know what they say, second one, best one.
I'm going to ask, do you remember the first one?
I feel like I remember the first one where I was a guest. And the first one I co-hosted, I can remember, I think I really dressed up.
Did you?
I think I wore a blue shirt that had like massive big frills on it that looked like, I think I had a joke about it looking like something like a cross between a bullfighter and a nurse, an NHS nurse.
I do remember you saying in the early days, if you got a Guilty Feminist, you would treat yourself to a new blouse.
Yeah, I did get a new blouse for everyone and then realised that's not a great attitude planet-wise if this is going to be, thank God, 80 blouses later.
But I think at the beginning you were like, oh, this feels special, so I'm going to get myself a new blouse.
So it was 10 years ago, it's pre-vinted.
Now, and also now a 10 a penny.
Yeah.
The Guilty Feminist for you, not blouses.
Yeah.
So that's lovely when I look back that you felt it was so special, it deserved a special blouse.
It was so special. It didn't feel so special. It was.
Well, that is absolutely lovely. Was it at King's Place?
Yep.
I feel like this is all coming back to me now. I think we've got a clip from that because I think this is wisdom that we could stand here again.
Okay, I'm going to look in.
I'm really conflicted about heels at all, in the sense that I have a pair. I generally have a pair max, and like
you mean a pair? That's not. I thought it was a brand. I thought, shit, I haven't even heard of this brand. She's so chic.
Imagine. She's so
I'm googling next. Like, a pair. Can't find them.
Yeah. I'm nailing this, pretending I've done it on purpose. Thing, like chick nail polish as well. The maximum I'll ever have is a pair of heels. I think that they're so uncomfortable. I think that even if they feel nice, like you're saying, in the first few seconds, then it goes horrible so quickly. But it just feels like the sort of thing that as a teenager I understood the desire, I had that desire, I wanted to fit in, and I'd get them and I'd be in agony. And then I just think anything where you think you have to go through any sort of pain really to achieve beauty. I can understand why teenagers did it. Like I remember when I was a teenager, this lip gloss came out that we all went and bought, and that had, it said, snake venom in it. And it stung your lips, so it made your lips more pouty because they were in screaming pain. And we all went out and bought it. We're like, yeah, I want that pain. So it feels like for me, heels are the same sort of thing that we ought to essentially just grow out of. But on the cross side, as a grown-up, still occasionally I whack them on when I want to feel sexy. And even though I can't run in them, and it's so impractical, it's kind of sometimes worth that first few minutes of how sexy you feel. I don't know if that's because I've got really short legs and I'm not being down on my body.
That was your very first appearance.
Oh my God, it's so funny. She's waffly. No. She's verbose. They did bring out this. I remember. The other mad thing about that lip gloss with snake venom is we all had to save up for it. We were teenagers and we had to get a bus an hour and a half.
No.
Into Bournemouth to buy the venom.
You did a
again.
90-minute bus tour to get snake venom.
Well,
round trip, three
hour
hours.
Round trip.
3 hours for the...
To get snake venom lipstick, I think I popped it on 2-3 times.
Was it painful?
Yeah.
Wow. That's madness, isn't it? The things that
also
girls
got more than
are
one pair
taught
of
to
heels
do,
now.
Or the environment teaches girls to do is just... But you've gone towards the heels.
I've got more than one pair of heels, but I still won't wear them. They're for wearing in situations where I know I'm going to be able to mainly sit.
Yeah.
And I won't ever wear them if I've even got... I live like over 10 minutes walk from a station, so they're coming out with me, or if I get
I carry flats in a bag.
Yeah.
I take a little tote bag with flats if I've got an event that I need.
Yeah, and I'll take them with me if I'm doing corporate, or I'll take them with me but I want to have more than one pair. And I've got some outfits that don't look right without a raised heel now.
I think last night I went to a press night of a play and I just thought, I can't do it. I'm just doing flats. And I was bouncing around the room, seeing people, super comfortable, never thinking, when can I leave, when can I sit down?
Yeah. Lovely.
I mean, it's not that I never do it, but I love not doing it.
No, I love not doing it. It's for very special occasions, and every now and again I'll just be in that kind of mood where I think, just get them on.
Yeah.
And I like wearing them. I think they look beautiful. So if you're on a show where you're mainly sitting, whack them on.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I remember that my first few themes were really like, silly and light. And then I remember them moving to, maybe it'd be broad, but you could still be really silly with it, like shame. And then I remember it got to a point at the Hammersmith, it wasn't Apollo, the other one.
It was a Christmas show.
Yeah, where it was like, and it's fascism. And I was like, okay, we've really taken a turn.
I would love to still be on shoes, but the world took a turn, Jess.
I know.
The world took a turn. I don't feel like I brought fascism on.
No, it wasn't your fascism.
It was a response to the rising tide.
I know.
Fortunately, that's gone away. Lol. That's getting way worse. The ones you've done recently have been, of course, Road to Gilead themed shows, which have been about fascism in the extreme. In fact, right-wing Christian nationalism, populism. Did you see that Reform have now just announced their Christian fellowship?
No.
Yeah. Every time we do a show, it's like the next day, or that within that next week, Reform will come out and do things we've just said. When we've defeated that, I'd love to revisit shoes.
Yeah, we'll do another shoes episode.
Can you remember your first I'm a Feminist but?
I think it was I'm a Feminist but my favourite type of apple's called Pink Lady.
Oh, let's hear it, Ned.
I'm a feminist, but my favourite type of apples are called Pink Lady.
Yay! Well done!
Some of mine are quite short.
What was that?
I think I said some of mine are quite short.
Why couldn't I prefer a really androgynous Brabham?
Well, actually, are they all stereotypes? Because there's also Granny Smiths, which is a bit patronising as well, isn't it? Granny Smith. Is there one called a Jonathan Delicious? Is that just me? Have I made that up?
Golden.
There's a gold. Is it Golden Delicious? It's not Jonathan. I've made that up. I felt like there was maybe that was a guy I dated in high school.
Jonathan Delicious.
I didn't date anyone.
I think in Australia there were Jonathan Smiths and Golden Delicious.
Really?
And I've put those together in my mind.
Very nice.
And I didn't date anyone in high school, so that's clearly a lie.
Yeah, that's really cute.
A lie joke. Just like trying to make myself cool by throwing it out there that I might have had a boyfriend in high school.
Yeah.
I didn't. Can I ask,
Yeah.
because you've done some doozy I'm a Feminist butts over the years, how do you write them now?
Well, I discovered recently when I didn't have time to, that I write them from a place of very real emotion these days. I sleep on them and then make them funny and palatable the next day.
But the other day you had to stand in at a moment's notice because poor Grace Petrie got stuck on a train.
And I just said things that I do think and feel, and I imagine there will be a backlash. I've been ruminating on it, actually. I said some I decided it was time to release what felt like a slightly more considered joke based on an opinion I've got, based on some fears around the proliferation of GLP-1 weight loss jabs.
It got
for the masses.
Big reaction from the audience, though.
A really positive reaction from the audience, because I think people have been too scared to say anything, so they don't want to upset anyone. Me included, I don't want to upset anyone, but I am at a point where I think if people are using that drug who don't need medicine, it's, I think, catastrophic from a feminist point of view, potentially. Anyway, I think so I use them as a vehicle to say a thing I really think or feel these days, because I think I'm just a braver comedian than I was 10 years ago. But also, sometimes they just come to you. The funniest ones just come to you and you make a note. And so at times there's a reservoir you can go to pull a few out of. when you get a date in the diary for a new Guilty Feminist. There might be some, you can go back. And sometimes I'll be like, why did I think that was funny? And I'll completely rewrite it. But if I have a moment of feminist guilt, I do write, I keep a note.
I do too, because otherwise you forget them and you think, I had a really good one.
Yeah.
And so I have notes in my phone and I just put IAFB.
Yeah, very
And
good.
that's my shorthand. And I look up IAFB and just see what's there.
Great.
So I know I've already used that one. I know I must have searched these notes for the last show.
Yeah.
I've got to write something.
Also, this might be like a sign of how a particular type of brain works. But if you said, think of one now, I'd be like, and it wouldn't be very good. But I sometimes quite like the pressure of being on my way to a show to force,
Yes.
or to sharpen them, if not force a new one out. I need the adrenaline of the deadline.
Sometimes I've written a whole like mini monologue or a comedy poem or something before going on stage in the wings.
Yeah.
But it's the pressure of being in the wings that makes it come out.
Well, and I think actually just in terms of writing stand-up, generally it's a really good point. Like in terms of any performance of anything you've written, if you're performing, not necessarily just as yourself, but anything that's going to be live where you're going to be present in the moment that you can edit up until the point you're on stage, is it almost worth leaving a bit of a window in that time? If I've got a train journey into a gig of any sort, my mind wants me to get 15 jobs off my to-do list done and emails answered and messages replied to in that time. And actually, I've learned over the years to leave space in that time, because if you use that time when you're full of adrenaline and deadline feelings,
yes.
you will improve what you've got. Even if it's a show I've already halfway through a tour of, I try and use that time just pre-show to have my mind at least in the contents of the show, because it will get better. It will find improvements.
Yeah, it'll see a kappa or a tweak or an adjective that's different in that moment, because it's about to go on stage, so it's under pressure.
Exactly. Yeah.
And suddenly that's how somehow the stand-up comedian's brain works.
Mm.
How much, because you've written a lot of stand-up bespoke for the Guilty Feminist. You and Cal Wilson stand out in my mind as the two that would write something absolutely bespoke that was every time brilliant. Like every time.
That's not true.
So many times you would stand up with a clipboard like this with A4 paper on it.
Yeah.
And or a notebook and read out like perfect stand-up.
Now I bring my phone so I don't have to do them printing out.
But you do, you were able to. The one that really stands out for me is you did material on birth.
Oh God,
giving birth.
I really remember that.
And I was crying with laughter. It was hysterically funny. And
that
I said,
like
you've got to
hone
that.
Yeah.
And then that became Key and Hench, didn't it?
Yeah, it was a huge bit of that show, which interestingly I learned at a normal stand-up gig didn't fly. It had to be cushioned in the context of the show. Wow. I tried it maybe 10, 20 times in shorter
clubs?
sets. And nice clubs, nice gigs. I wouldn't have tried a Saturday full of Hindus, but it needed to be cushioned in the context of that show. But it had two outings that succeeded, and it was the first time I was booked for a storytelling event at the Fringe the year before, maybe.
Yeah.
And it was only 4 minutes or something. And I thought, oh, God, I wrote down my birth story somewhere. I'll tell it. And I think this was a few years before this. And I wasn't quite ready. Rudy was brand new. And I told this story and began sobbing in this tent in Edinburgh, this BBC tent, and was like crying. Yeah, and I was like, I'm not over this, and this isn't funny. Anyway, 18 months, 2 years later,
respond?
I think it was okay. I think it was quite powerful.
Yeah,
I think rather it wasn't. I don't know. That is my very murky memory. That is not to say that.
I'm sure it was.
They might have just been like,
I'm sure it was. But were they like? Oh my God, like they must have been.
It was for me to have wanted to do it again. It can't have been awful. I remember it just being shocked by my own emotion at the story. Cut to whatever it was, 18 months or so later, where you said the theme's going to be story. So you can just tell a story, like a meaningful story was your brief to me for that one. I went, hang on. And I came at it and thought, right, tell it again, but in this context of this kind, giving, generous audience who actually will seek comedy in what you're saying. So you got to, I did a pass of it, but actually I remember feeling like it was being made funnier through the performance for the first time, because there wasn't any pressure on it to be comedy. It was a storytelling. It was the power of story was the theme of that episode. So I could just tell what it felt like was a powerful story without it having to be funny, but found moments of funniness in it. And then was like, oh, and you were right, you know, and that night I was like, God, this could be stand-up. I feel like a lot of Hench especially was born on The Guilty Feminist, because that audience was so gorgeous. Well, they are so gorgeous for comedy that you know, it's a perfect new material gig, weirdly. You'll probably have had guests and co-hosts whose agents say to them, you know, don't burn material on the podcast, you know, because, you know, you can't, but I think social media's changed that. All our material's everywhere anyway. Yeah. And also, I remember being like, no, I birthed my material on that podcast, because you can, I think I've probably done, there's bits of stand-up that people, if they've listened to every episode, will have heard as like a bag of ideas, probably another 5 or 6 times to something polished that's out of a talk show.
Yes,
it's great.
Absolutely.
Like
also, I think an audience coming to see you on tour, because I know a lot of Guilty Feminists come to see you on tour, because they love you and they're hoping to see then a whole hour of you. If they've heard that piece kind of birthed, as it were, then they're kind of hoping to see that, because they're in the context of an hour, because that may be 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But also now they're seeing it honed. And also I do think people are listening to that as they're on their commute, or as they're going on their run, or they're falling asleep. Yeah. They're not remembering that word for word.
I've never remembered anybody's bit of stand-up word for word.
If I go and see it, they think, oh yeah, I loved this bit.
Yeah.
And they're hoping then to sort of really take it in, and of course you've changed it and elevated it. But I think sometimes seeing something for the first time is a wonderful experience, because it's never fresher and never more real.
Yeah.
And it can be a better experience than seeing the honed version, because you feel the energy of it.
Totally. And also you get to see the workings, you know, you get to see behind the curtain, really. And actually, I don't know, it's a bit like with the birth story, and I don't know if other stand-ups have this, I don't know if you have this, but I think when it's something that's happened in my life, I've learnt that actually you need to tell the story of what's happened. I remember getting somebody trying to mug me and me not realising quite that that's what had gone on. Yeah. And I actually can't remember the details of the story now, but I was on my way to a gig. I remember telling it to like uproar, because it was so obviously just happened.
Yes.
And I'd idiotically not realised. And so I told this story to uproar on this night, and then tried to tell it a few nights later at that gig, and it was gone. The magic was gone from it. And it didn't mean there wasn't the skeleton of what would later become a bit, but actually sometimes you need a bit of distance. You either need to tell it the second it's happened, which you get the experience of if we're telling, you know, stories from really new ideas on the podcast. Sometimes you need a bit of proximity to it. I think especially if it's like an emotional life event.
Yes.
To be able to treat it like you need to treat it technically as a writer, for it to become the very finished thing it becomes.
Yes. But I find the great thing about stand-up is it's such an organic art form, because all of those phases, the first time you say it, you realise it's something, the audience feel that kinetic energy of, wow, this has just happened to you. You're literally saying a funny thing happened to me on the way to the gig.
Yeah.
And they feel that that's real. And then the honing, where you're sharpening it, you're finding that that's a better adjective, that's funnier if I combine this story with it. And then the polished, you can just see it's like you're just watching them just completely in their element. It's like watching someone surf or something like that, where they're just like, absolutely know it.
It still will have been better, a bit, even if it's honed, even if it's years on, even if you smush together 3 stories to make the best bit of stand-up, will always be better if it, to some extent, it did happen at some point.
There's an old Jewish proverb that goes something like, there's nothing truer than truth but story. And so sometimes you need to just change the order of events somehow, or put 2 characters into one, in order that the story's funnier and therefore truer to the emotion you felt when it happened.
Yeah.
But if you completely make something up and pretend that it happened, maybe some comedians can definitely do that and they love it. I can't.
Don't, no.
I hate it.
Me neither. I don't like it. It's about it. There's an example in my current show that's I couldn't quite work out. There's a child in my life who did and said some fabulous things. And I couldn't quite work out whether or not I needed to make it my son. But now he's too old now, and I'm saying other stuff about him, which is true about his character, or like a version of his character of where he's at now. That I needed this other kid. And it was like, but who? I don't want to. It doesn't work as a stand. You haven't got time to say, it's a dear old friend of mine's second child, whose eldest child I'm sort of a godparent to, but the young one, I don't know him as well, actually, blah, blah, blah. His name's this, like, whatever. And I was like, what are you doing? Just say nephew. Who cares?
Yeah. Nobody
Just say
cares.
godson. Just say 4-year-old boy. Like, but all of that analysis, it actually takes me quite a long time in my storytelling to stop saying all the details of the actual facts and pull yourself into the storyteller version where you've just give them someone they can picture with a rough idea of what who he is to you.
Yes, that he's a friend in your life. And all of that you learn, and I feel sometimes we learn it every time. Every time you own a show, you go, oh, this.
Yeah.
You know, but sometimes you just have to go through the stages.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of this process of honing, would you like to hear the very first time you did the birthing story on The Guilty Feminist? It'll probably be quite different from what you did on Hinge.
Yeah.
Here is
Go
a clip.
on, let's do it.
Cheers, thank you. Hello, you all right? Yeah. Good. I'll tell you a story. A little while ago, I heaved out a baby. You're correct not to care. Because of overpopulation. I knew about the overpopulation and overconsumption, and I did it anyway. Selfish. Just to set my stall out from the off, I'm very fit and well, and my son is a giant, happy, healthy 2.5-year-old unit. I was so excited to be pregnant. I very, very much wanted a baby. I got all the advice from the midwives and all the rest of my middle class around me about the 2 types of birth I could choose from. I could either have a clinicalised, hospital bed, drug-filled, manic birth, or if I wanted, I could have a lovely one. I decided I'd like a lovely one, please. I read all 3 pamphlets and I got very excited about the serene, hypnotised, potentially orgasmic, crucially pain-free water birth that I'd have.
Oh, God. They're still peddling that shit.
Friends would tell me their harrowing birth stories and I'd think, oof, poor them. Thank God I've chosen a lovely birth. During my pregnancy, one friend who'd given birth 6 months before told me she knew she'd opted in advance for an epidural because she said she knew that she didn't deal very well with physical pain. And I chuckled. I remember thinking, that sounds like exactly when to opt for an epidural. And that's why I won't need it, because I am very strong. I'm actually wonderful with pain. I'm always lifting such heavy shopping. And when I was 13, my PE teacher said in front of the whole class, "You, Jessica, are an absolute powerhouse."
That went in a different bit. That went in a totally
at the
different
time,
bit.
that was mortifying. Now, a 34-year-old
God, that's
proud
funny.
feminist,
That's so funny.
You're so good, Jess. I do.
You are. Shut up.
I
That is
remember
fascinating.
the first time I saw you, and it was at the Camden Comedy Club, little room above a pub gig round the corner from my house, and you did a whole routine about a breakfast at a B&B.
Oh, yeah, Morecambe.
And I just thought you were so skilled and so funny, and I was just like, wow, who's she? And as soon as I had that opportunity to invite co-hosts on The Guilty Feminist, I was just like, Jess Fostekew, please, because I knew how good you were. How different is the routine now that you've listened to that?
Haven't done that routine for a long time, but it's fascinating watching. Basically, I don't think that was a conscious thing, but that bit itself would have been just swooped down to what's the fundamental idea here. It's that pregnant people are sold either a medical birth or a lovely one.
Yes.
And that was the joke, really. And then it's like, it kind of, as with all longer bits like that, based on reality, will have contracted down to that, fundamentally that essential, that's the funniest bit. So it will have really contracted back down. And then will have grown again But it's funny that there's bits in there that then were like, their exposition in that story, so they've come out of that story, but the teacher calling me a powerhouse was a completely separate bit of Henge. That comes ages before in just a discussion around physical strength. To tee up physical strength in advance means you can lose all the stuff about shopping. You know.
I love the promise of this premise.
Yeah, you know something awful's coming, don't you?
Yeah, the smugness of you, and I'm sure other people have a difficult time, but I'm not going to, is just latent in it. So we're all laughing at the for future you because you're self-knowingly telling the story, which had the birth been lovely, you wouldn't be saying this. And
imagine if it had and I did.
If you turn around and went, and I did have a lovely one, guys. It was amazing. If any of you had a difficult birth, you needn't have. Imagine
you just weren't as strong as me.
The audience would turn. But they know where this is going because you're promising something and we can't wait for you to deliver it, all puns intended. How do you feel like writing for The Guilty Feminist, having done over 80 episodes, do you feel like writing stand-up for The Guilty Feminist has made your stand-up more feminist? Or do you think you would have gone that way anyway?
Definitely made it more feminist.
Do you think it's led to more feminist themes in your show?
Ooh. Yes, maybe a bit of chicken and egg, but yes, just yes. I just have to credit The Guilty Feminist with that, yes.
I mean, I'm not asking you, but more I'm just interested in, like, it's not really credit,
I've got no idea. Yes, that's the wrong way of putting it, but like there's no, they're invariably, the waves were turning, I think, but
from shoes to fascism.
Yeah. I think the longer you do stand-up, the more likely you are to end up doing stand-up about things you care about. Because otherwise you get bored. And even when you are, I'm nearly 20 years in now. And even though I'm doing stand-up about things I care about or that I feel are important in the world, even then I sometimes think, God, should
I'd rather stay home.
Or no, or just like, should I be doing something more useful than being a clown? Oh. You know, I could probably learn to drive a tank. You know, I address these issues in my current show. But like, I do wonder, you know, should I be using my brains that are functional for something other than getting clapped for turning up? Do you know what I mean? But, you know, so I think within what I'm doing, I'm like more driven than ever to go, right, why aren't I doing enough stuff about the climate? Why aren't I doing, like, where do I, and then I push and pull with that as well sometimes. I go, right, I'm going to have a break. I have moments going, I'm going to have a break. My social media doesn't have to know. That platform for me and my personality doesn't have to expose my every political thought and feeling. That's not, that might not be the best place, actually, to have a meaningful conversation on this, and this topic. But maybe it is somewhere where I'm brave enough to say something about you, Les. Do you know what I mean? But it's like, it's different places for different types of speaking out, but stand up and your performance, I think I would have got more politicised, but I think it took me there early and it gave me a safe space to, you know, start flirting with that kind of
writing that kind of material and showcasing it to an appreciative audience.
I mean, it was the most is the most safe, gorgeous audience. It's kind of a different offer now because the audience are so, they know what they're coming for and they know the activism will be on point. That actually these days it's a different offer coming to do. The stand-up bit is actually compared to in real life where, you know, on a stand-up bill, you might be the one who's got something challenging in your 20 minutes that other people don't, potentially. Or that your opinions your politics quite obvious from your chat in your set in a way that the other comedians on the bill might not be. Whereas at a Guilty Feminist Now gig for me, I'm like, well, whatever I do will be the life relief.
Right.
So it can be about shoes for 5 minutes, you know, unless you've said it's on this, is there anything, you know.
That's so interesting. That's really interesting. So the context in a club, your set might be the most political thing in it.
Yeah.
At the Guilty Feminist, you're like, I know that I've got.
I'll be the least political thing in it.
I'll make them laugh for a while.
Yeah.
So that it draws the audience in, relaxes everyone, puts everyone in a good mood, sets the tone that this is going to be fun and playful. And then when we change gears and we're talking to an incredible, some people we've talked to lately, Baroness Barker.
Oh my God.
Who else have we talked to? Russell T Davies.
Yeah, oh my crumbs.
Absolutely amazing, iconic television showrunner and very
Only
creative
on the Guilty
mind.
Feminist could I have ended up working with Russell T Davies in my PE kit.
In your PE kit?
Pre-shower.
Yes, because you had to come on a Lime bike in an emergency stand-in for Grace Petrie, but it was a really wonderful show.
What? I loved it.
And so we've talked to some amazing
talked to some
people
extraordinary people.
about what we feel is happening in the world and what evidently is happening in the world. And I like the interviews also to have a sense of play and joy and fun. If you do stand up at the top, firstly, the audience gets some, respite from the world. And it's like a reward of, we can relax, we know we're going to be in on the joke here. And then it just sets the tone that we're playful. This is a playful space.
Yes.
And it's not like a hard-hitting Newsnight interview. Yeah. It is going to be a joyful energy. But
it's
not
so all joyful, but it's going to be, I think as well, if you're my stand-up and yours, we're both like, it's quite like, here I am, here's my feelings, here's my whole soul.
Yeah.
There's not much held back. I remember even on that earliest ever Guilty Feminist, I think saying some quite personal stuff about... I think about heels and things like that. Anyway, I do remember, like, I don't know, my point is, I don't think it all is then becoming playful. I think one of the skills I've learned through doing Guilty Feminists that I can't imagine any other context of getting the chance to practice like that at is like riding the gear shift.
Right.
From comedy into sometimes a very emotional conversation,
a
very moving, a very scary, a very like intense, deep. There's nowhere thematically that a show hasn't gone in terms of dark, deep, sad,
100%.
awful. And riding out and like reading the vibe. And there are some very heavy, serious shows where it's felt appropriate to keep being funny and keep undercutting the heaviness. And then there's others where, hopefully I've called it right, where you just are in a completely different mode and you're looking for questions to ask and you're feeling the feelings along with everyone else.
You're
and every
really
now and
great
again,
at the tone.
every now and again, you do get shows where even though we are talking about, depending on the subject, if we know we've gone into where you can continue to be silly actually and you can undercut it enough, as long as you're never making a guest feel silly.
No, because the joke's always about undercutting the problem when it comes. I remember Julia Gillard came on the podcast Cal and I hosted in Sydney. We hadn't told the audience it was a surprise. Huge venue. The audience just screamed when she came out. But she was as funny as anyone on QI. She was just bants. And people were like, we've never seen her like that before. And I was like, of course she's funny. She's super clever. Of course she's funny. But she didn't have a lot of opportunity to show that. And I think one of the things I love about stand-up at the top, and I'm a Feminist Bart, is that it puts the room into that energy. So then you're inviting someone into a dinner party, really funny dinner party, and they get to show that side of themselves. And it's really important that Iranian women are not wheeled out to be like sad things, very sad things, very important things, very important things. Of course they want to say all that as well. But they also want to undercut that with a joke, like every human being in the world undercuts sadness and trauma with jokes.
Yeah.
So I love having you on because I know your stand-up will always be funny and tonally. You then are so good at all the gear shifts, back and forth, or just undercutting something in the interview with a really well-timed gag that's never at the expense of the topic or the guest. But you really care. I get that feeling when I co-host with you that you really care.
I really care. Also, I think to some extent you have it or you don't, and it's a confidence thing. But I do think the more you do it, the better you get at it. And you have given me a platform to practice it.
That's true. That's true, I suppose. You're right.
We have a friendship where, I'm trying to explain to my son about like when banter goes wrong, when he will make a new friend. He's only 9, when he make a new friend, he'll go in with some banter that will have made a friend in his class who he's had for 5 years crack up, but this person's sad. And you're like, right. And actually, it's very tricky learning. And I'd forgotten this. Pierre Novelli has got a brilliant bit in his book about his adult autism diagnosis as well. He's very articulate in that about like how you learn part of really loving, trustful friendships and presumably working relationships is that you can take the piss out of each other a little bit, and because you feel safe with each other to a point, obviously. Yes. You can. There's a bit of push there, and you can challenge a bit, and it's part of. It's not unkind. You do it in your romantic relationships too. You have a laugh because you can take the piss out of each other a bit, and you can take it. It's part of being confident and feeling safe, is that you can take having the mickey taken out of you a little bit. And I think the fact that we've got that is golden.
So that's how you know who your friends are.
Yeah,
because you can lower and raise their status for fun, and
it's a lovely way of putting it.
I think that learning that, as you say, there was a story recently out in the press that I'm sure you heard, where lots of Nigel Farage's school friends had come out and said the attitudes that he is purveying now are, long time, and if he's saying he's not racist, well, this is evidence that at school he certainly did say racist things.
Stories are horrific.
And one of the former boys at Dulwich College, who was a contemporary of his, was saying that he'd said lots of anti-Semitic things. And the interviewer said, well, he says this was banter. And the chap said, you can only have banter with friends.
Yeah.
And I didn't know him.
No, he said he was in the year below him at school.
And he said he used to
wait. He found out he was Jewish and would wait for him to, when the Jewish kids would go and pray.
Yes.
And he'd wait outside the room.
Yes. And he said the only reason he knew I was Jewish is because he'd turn up to those prayers, the man said. But what really struck me is him saying, you can only have banter with friends, and he wasn't my friend. And I thought that's really a good thing to remember. And, as you're talking to your son about it as well, does that person feel like you're their friend?
Yeah.
Because then you have to test the waters, because some people are also more sensitive than others.
Well, it is learning to do that testing. You got to start gently, etc. It's been fascinating. It's a fascinating ride trying to sort of coach another whole human on that when you don't always get it right yourself.
Yes, of course.
As an adult. But when you've got that trust, it's so lovely. Like, it's a really crucial part of deep human relationships.
Oh, absolutely.
It's great.
Sometimes you can have a really close friend and both of you take the piss and love it.
Yeah.
But you don't realise one particular thing is sensitive or has recently become sensitive.
Yeah.
And you can step on a landmine. And then you have to go, I'm so sorry. I didn't know.
Yeah.
That
in the lockdowns, my sensors went pretty skew-if.
Did they?
Yeah, pretty dodge. I was glitching socially.
I think all of our social filters got disrupted.
I remember the first gig in the wild at a roof. No, not the first gig in the wild, but I remember doing an outdoor gig, walking into it, and the two people running it were like, oh my God, I love your earrings. Oh, I love your outfit. And I went, look at these ulcers. It's not a normal way to react to compliments on appearance.
You telling me that at the time.
What the fuck?
Do you remember House Party? There was an app.
Oh, I joined it and never used it.
So it was an app where if you could see friends talking, if they left their door of their house party open, you could just crash in. And I saw Raven Smith, a man I don't know that well, but really thought his stuff on Instagram was funny, had met him socially a couple of times, saw he was talking to some other people. And this is how mad it was. This was the first.
Yeah.
I think we'd been locked away for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Just enough that it had gone off my radar, but I was going a bit stir crazy. Maybe it was a couple of weeks more. He was talking to some other people and I crashed the party, and they were all women I didn't know. And I said, we were talking. He introduced me to them, and then we were talking, and then I said, my takeaways turned up. Oh, but my bath's also just full. I'm just going to get in the bath. Now looking back, it turned out they were all like Channel 4 executives.
Okay.
And I got in the bath. And on House Party, you could only see tiny heads.
Yeah.
So it was fun. I was like, look, I'm getting in the bath, but you can't see anything. Raven afterwards told me, on what you could see of yourself on House Party is just your small head, but they could see more. And he said, no, we could totally see your breasts. And now, in what world would I, in any other time in history, have zoomed anyone in the bath? Like, ever? I just don't...
That's not on. The makers of House Party, that's not on.
Well,
that's like not okay. If you think you're just showing a little bit of head and you've got your whole chunks out.
It went bust, all puns intended. And possibly that's why. The last 10 years, your life has changed quite significantly, and the story of your life has sort of been on the podcast.
Yeah.
If we put all of that together,
Oh my God, yeah. Not straight.
you were, and you had a baby. You had what you called your sexist baby.
Hack. How trad. Hack old trad wife. I'm starting.
Have we got a clip of my sexist baby?
I've got a 3-year-old son who's a sexist. And because he's 3, the worst insult he can possibly give you is, "You're not my best friend." And he's, to be fair to him, just as bad at compliments as he is at insults. A compliment he gave me recently on holiday last week was in front of my whole family. I was in a bikini. He said, "Mummy, I love your tummy." Because it's massive! And don't tell my son, but, I mean, obviously he is not my best friend. He's 3. It's objectively poor company. But to flip it round...
That was you early on. How has your life changed? I think "come out's the wrong word. You've explored other parts of your sexual orientation.
Yeah.
Sexuality.
Well, I just got some crushes on women, but my relationship with my man partner was already done. So I wanted to be single for a good few years. I wanted to really put it about a bit, Debs. And I'm very annoying. Fell in love in 3 months.
Fell in love in 3 months.
Yeah.
And that was around the period of what the Guilty Feminist Curse, which was a tour that we did where lots of women suddenly came out or found their
Queerness.
Bisexuality, found their queerness. They were falling like soldiers at that time. They were just like, it became
it was great.
a running gag that it became like Strictly, that people were, like, don't go on the Guilty Feminist tour. And how has that changed your relationship to feminism and stand-up?
Oh, God, that's interesting. I think, it's just like it's a funny thing, I think, if you are grown up, when you change to having a life that's like slightly less conventional or privileged, because I think that's just it. And it puts you in an interesting position of like what isn't yours to have ownership over. And I've been with the same nearly wife for years now. But I still don't, I think I fretted over it initially, because I fretted over the complexity of labels and identity, and I fretted over a kind of making sure I had a kind of real queer education. And I don't just mean watch the whole of the L Word back catalogue. Like trying to work out all the different types of, there's like 18 different types of butch that a lesbian can be. Anyway, and even now I've gone so far the other way, I just go bisexual, pansexual like that. I can't even be asked to choose between them, because I'm not getting into I can't be bothered with the politics of it. And also I don't feel like it's it's not my fight to fight. And I think that's been interesting too. Just then living in a life where your feminism gets dialed up, your spidey sense is there, in the sense that for me, it's more, I think I very rarely feel moments of homophobia that are direct. It's more when I'm aware of something that's going to get reflected via my son. Right. So we had a local candidate for a council position run on a really horrible homophobic platform. It was a far-right Christian party and a candidate running for them. And it was a very colourful pamphlet that came through all of our doors so my son could read by the time this was happening. And it said, get rid of homosexual marriage, agree that it's an abomination and unnatural, and that homosexuals shouldn't be allowed anywhere near children. And so I put a bit in my show about that. I was lucky enough to be allowed to write a Guardian article about it. And
it was very good.
I'll tell you what's something that really boiled my piss that a Guilty Feminist listener helped me with recently. Is that whoever has, you can't do your own Wikipedia page.
Oh, yeah.
Whoever's done mine hated that article and all that bit of that show, because there's all these facts about my career, which are in themselves sort of annoyingly accurate. And then this bit where, I'm just assuming it's a guy, but it might not be, has written, It was something like she equates being against equal marriage as being homophobic.
Well, it is homophobic.
Yeah, and it was like, what? Why have you put that like that? Anyway, I was saying that after a Guilty Feminist show recently with a
someone else who
listener who was
updates
here from
Wikipedia
America.
changed that.
She's done it.
Oh, great.
One of your amazing listeners has updated it. She's
thrilled.
rewritten the entire thing, actually. It's so much more nicely written now.
I'm thrilled. I wonder if that person will check and
try and
who
put knows? What can you do? Like, it's not, again, but I think I find I've got a few new fights to fight, if that's the way of thinking about it. I don't know. My ears are pricked in a way that they weren't pre-living in my queerness, in the sense that I was at a gig recently and a not queer presenting comedian mentioned her wife on stage, and I was sat with the audience who didn't know that I was on at some point that night, and there's just a little rustling of people turning to each other going, oh, lesbian, all right, lesbian, and you're like that, ding, like you're just listening that little extra bit in a way that you wouldn't be before, especially if you're about to be on stage, which, you know, is a vulnerable thing to be if you're a stand-up who's honest about their life. And I was like, what are they saying? What's that? And then you sort of go, just relax. Like, there's no need to feel threatened. They're stating a fact. They're going, I've just realised this about her. You hadn't realised, you know, and it turned out to be an absolutely lovely gig. And it was,
but it's interesting, isn't it?
And I was like, oh, that's,
because you've
and
shifted your identity.
Now that's her. And the irony that people with stand up about their identity, you know, the right love to say, all he does is material about being brown, all she does is material about being a leser, get some other joke. And you're like, well, yeah, but if we don't mention it, you're blown away by it as a casual revelation.
Yes.
We're doing it for you if we say, I know you might not have noticed, but you know, you can't win.
Because if you just say my wife or my girlfriend.
Yeah, which is what this comedian had done. It was just kind of stunning.
Just casually thrown it to the side.
And you could tell people,
what? She's not telling you jokes.
She didn't have the T-shirt on that warmed us, you know, like, come on. Like, they'd have hated it if she'd come on going with her Les T-shirt on. I'm a big Les.
It must be very interesting to shift your identity in that way because of changing circumstances, and then just to read the room differently.
I think I read the room differently. I think it's changed my feminism in that way.
I bet.
And I think I've got a bit of a spidey sense about me in that there are ever shifting sands with where it feels like the public are at compared to a Guilty Feminist listener generally. And I think trying to ride that, trying to feel your way around your own family dynamics and friendship group dynamics is ever interesting. And I think that, you know, being part of the podcast, I know that being part of the podcast has given me a confidence and a language to be better equipped in those situations. And actually, the more confident you are in those situations where you're around people who, you know, you might have a fundamental mismatch of values with, actually the less adversarial I find I need to be, because it's not a smugness. I've made that sound smug. It's just a case of like, I think you might have been sold a completely different truth to me. Should we say which truths we've been sold? And it's a much nicer way in, you know. Even my mum, I don't think she'll listen to this, but I think she's got a lot of opinions. She's really, at times, we don't go there very often as a subject, but at times I think she struggles with the changing landscape in terms of gender generally, and feels like she's been left out of the conversation or doesn't understand why the conversation's become even so heated. And it's like, I think the podcast has given me the language to come in at different angles and keep things productive and loving and civil and respectful in terms of those conversations.
Oh, I'm delighted to hear that. What do you hope for the next 10 years of feminism?
Oh, let's just go big. So I want there to be like a utopian shift in momentum when it comes to making the changes that need to be made for us to avoid a climate collapse. Like, I think that's something that we have so many really important, scary turds being thrown at a fan by people like Trump that we forget that underlying pressure is there all the time. So I want to say that one first, because I think actually we're at a point where there are amazing, practical, doable things that we can be doing to adjust what we have to the different landscape that we're going to have because of the inevitable changes now in climate, as in be building things in different ways, be making things more affordable, make big sweeping changes to how we use energy in our lives. And I think I want there to be a big feminist empowered movement towards big green change, just in terms of people understanding how much power they have. I think people feel hopeless on that front, so they don't even let themselves think about it. But actually, I don't think people understand quite how powerful, not just what their vote will do, because sometimes they think, well, I voted for Labour and they said they do this, and this. They have actually done some amazing things towards cleaning up our energy and globally. But there are other parties that would do even more. People have even more power than they think they have with where they spend their money. I think that's the big way that people don't realise. They've got anybody who's got any savings, or who's even got their debt with one particular provider, let alone people who are lucky enough to have a pension or investments, or like people who are lucky enough to be able to choose which supermarket or seller they might get their food from, for example. Changing the choices you make there based on who is or isn't, just who isn't investing in fossil fuels, would be an absolute, complete and utter game changer. And that information is readily available online as to who is and isn't worth letting your money go. So that's a big feminist thing. But then I've got some other stuff as well, like I really would like not being in a small body to the point where it looks like you're not very well, to go back out of fashion, and this time a bit more permanently. I would like people to have power to choose what to do with their body reproductively, and to make all the possible choices they might have to them with that. Is that enough hopes? I feel like that's enough hope. I think we can do all those things in 10 years.
Do you feel hopeful? Do you think?
I feel dread as well, but there is also hope.
I think there's hope.
I've got loads of hope. I think things come and go in circles, and I think things like the future of feminism, the future for the climate, are things you can't afford to give up hope on. However bad things get, and get to the point where you're like, I'll be on my death rattle, and I'll be like, don't give up.
Yes.
Not on those things, because you can't, because it's survival.
Yeah, it's a lifelong community struggle.
Yeah, and it's our survival. It's not about thriving. It's about it's the future of humankind. So you just got to keep finding new ways to be positive and innovative about making things better.
If I asked you in 2026 to create a Guilty Feminist episode around that, where you get to curate the guests, would you be interested in doing that?
I'd be 100% interested in doing
Great.
that.
Okay, well, let's do that in 2026. Let's do the Jessica Fostekew curated climate change episode.
Yeah.
Where we really, really talk about it. And
I would absolutely love to do that. And I can get some really amazing experts. I've met some incredible people recently through a brilliant organisation called Okra. Let's do it.
Great. Jessica Fostekew, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
It's been an absolute delight.
Thanks for having me over 80 times.
Hey!
Second one, best one.
You have been listening to the Guilty Feminist 10 for 10 with me, Deborah Frances-White, and my very special guest, Jessica Fostekew. The Guilty Feminist theme tune was composed by Mark Hodge. The producers for The Spontaneity Shop were Ned Sedgwick and Tom Zielinski. Thanks to Gina DCO, Zainab Mohammed, and all of you for listening. For more information about this and other episodes, visit guiltyfeminist.com.